America is under attack. The world is under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack. You're under attack. And there's a part of you that is under attack. And I hate to say it, but you may be the attacker. And it is your heart attack. And that's what we're going to talk about today in part 7 of Body Battles. I'm Steve Wohlberg. My guest is Jack McIntosh, who is a health educator, a nutritionist. He's a lifestyle interventionist. He knows a lot about the body, and he's been my guest. And so, Jack, here we go for part 7. Thank you for being with me. And I want to just remind people of, or maybe just inform them of something that you said a long time ago that I haven't forgotten. I was listening to you give a talk in a large church, and I remember you've said this line. You said the first symptom that most people have that they're having a heart attack is sudden death. And I never forgot that. It's been many years since you said that. So let's get into this whole topic of the heart and how to protect the heart.
It's certainly a symptom that's hard to get around, isn't it? Sudden death doesn't give you many options.
No, it doesn't.
And for some people, that's true. It is the first symptom.
That's right. And actually, before you launch in, let me read a text here.
Yes.
This is in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verses 20 to 23. My son, attend to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings, to biblical sayings. Let not them depart from your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart. For they are life to those who find them and health to all their flesh. So God is concerned about the heart and about health. And then verse 23 says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. That's a powerful text. So from the heart come the issues of life, and that applies to things that are happening within us, like our motives and our desires and what we say, but it also applies to the health of our heart, because from the heart, the heart pumps blood to every cell in the body, and that's how we live.
The Bible says that the blood is the life.
The life.
The life is in the blood.
That's right.
And so we have a physical heart and we have a spiritual heart, and we are supposed to keep both.
That's right.
With diligence.
That's right. So as far as heart attacks, how big of a problem is this?
Well, it's a big problem. It's the number one source of mortality. But before we get into that, I want to introduce a little humor.
Sure.
Because this is a tough subject, for some people. In fact, I may ask our producers to put this little graphic up on the screen. A man walks into a restaurant with his wife, nice upscale restaurant, white tablecloth, And he sits down and he says to the waiter, "What comes with the steak?" And the waiter says, "Heart disease, cancer, and your choice of rice pilaf or a baked potato." So that's truth in advertising, right? That's what comes with the steak. And unfortunately, there are many insults to the heart on a daily basis. We don't get heart attacks the first time we have some junk food or a greasy hamburger or something like that. It takes years of insults, day after day after day. The sweet drinks, the hamburgers and the chicken and the high saturated fat foods, day after day after day, and those insults add up. And what happens is that eventually the heart gives out because of a blood clot or something, or a blockage of some kind, and we have what we call a heart attack. But the truth is that the heart has been under attack for a very long time before we get a heart attack. So today we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to prevent the insults to the heart and the cardiovascular system, the whole vascular system, really.
Okay, now just clarify for me, is the biggest risk the heart itself losing its ability on its own to pump, or is it the the system of arteries around it that get clogged so that then it runs into trouble? Which is the greater risk?
Well, it's
Or
the
is it
coronary
both?
arteries themselves that get blocked. And the blockage can come from years of insults, as we said, to the vascular system, the actual arteries in the heart, or it can come as a result of a blood clot. Blood clots, of course, are very dangerous. And that's one reason why we should keep the blood thin. Now, very often, if the blood is very thick and we're subject to clots, the doctor will give us a drug to thin the blood, Coumadin or some other drug. But in reality, the best way to thin your blood and prevent a heart attack is to drink water, because water thins the blood. Now, in America, in the morning, the first insult to the vascular system is something that causes you to lose water. We drink a drink that is a diuretic. A diuretic makes you lose water, right? And the blood becomes thicker. And after the third cup of this insult to the vascular system, the blood becomes very thick. And most heart attacks happen in the morning. So, it's 10 o'clock, I've had my third cup of coffee, and that caffeine is a diuretic. And so now my blood is very thick. And if I should happen to get a blood clot in that coronary artery and it blocks that artery, I have a heart attack, and I could be 50%, there's a 50-50 chance you will die. 50% survive and 50% die when we do have a coronary event. Or what they call myocardial infarction, which means that there's a blockage in the coronary arteries. So it's very important in the morning when you get up, excuse me, the first thing that you can do to protect your heart is to drink pure water, the beverage of Eden, because that thins your blood and makes it less likely that you're going to get a blood clot, because it's the blood clot that's the most dangerous thing. Even the blockages in the arteries, when the arteries narrow, as we talked about yesterday, very often there's a hard covering on that. But sometimes that plaque in the arteries is soft. And when that plaque is soft and doesn't have a hard covering on it,
break off.
It's liable to rupture. And from that rupture comes a blood clot. Blood flows out and it clots. And that clot can move on and block an artery down the line. And we have a classic heart attack. So something as simple as drinking water instead of coffee is one of the best things that you can do to protect your heart. Who knew, right?
Okay, so just to clarify for me, isn't the biggest risk for heart attack has to do with the arteries, right? The condition of the arteries, or a blood clot, or the thinning, or the thickening of the blood and the thickening of the arterial walls.
Yes.
More than just, the heart itself as a muscle, it's more the arteries that are going into the heart that have problems, which then eventually affects the muscle and gives you a heart
The
attack.
arteries within the heart, the
Right.
coronary arteries.
Within the heart, okay.
There is an artery that's called the widowmaker, the left, descending artery that gets blocked in men. But that's an artery within the heart itself.
I see.
And that can get blocked either by a blood clot or years of insults where the LDL cholesterol, particularly yesterday we talked about the LDL-B, which is a very dense form of the low-density lipoprotein LDL cholesterol. That dense LDL can get under the endothelium and into the artery wall and do damage, especially, of course, the oxidized version of that. So that's one of the reasons why we want to eat foods that are free of cholesterol, because that LDL-B is a heart attacker, if you will. It will do damage. There are two fractions, as we talked about yesterday. There's LDL-A, it's kind of large and fluffy and relatively harmless, But the LDL-B, the dense LDL, can get onto that endothelium, the lining of the artery.
Okay.
And the endothelium is very important because we talked about how it produces nitric oxide and it, dilates your arteries and keeps them open and lowers your blood pressure and all of that. Blood pressure, high blood pressure is a risk factor for a heart attack, for heart disease. So all those things mean something over time. The dietary, particularly the animal-based dietary, really makes a difference in whether or not we are at risk. So these days, for a long time, the American Heart Association and other organizations resisted the idea that a plant-based, or what we call an Eden diet, would be the best protector for the heart. But now they're on our side. The statements are there. They say that a plant-based diet is the ideal diet for preventing heart disease.
Okay, so we're talking about the tubes that feed the heart. I mean, there's a big tube that goes into the heart and goes out, but then the heart itself has these smaller tubes.
These arteries, coronary
arteries, the tubes that the blood flows in and nourishes the heart.
And nourishes the heart.
And so we got to keep those tubes healthy,
yes,
so that they're not hard, they're not clogged, they're open, the blood isn't thick, and so that all these factors work together. And you're saying that the water will help,
yes,
and the diet helps, and all these things contribute day by day, step by step to heart health, so we don't get a heart attack.
Now, we need to address something else here, and that is that all of the lifestyle diseases that we can name begin with inflammation. And so there are markers for inflammation in the body. When we have markers that indicate that there's a high inflammatory process going on, and one of the markers is something called CRP, C-reactive protein. When that number is high, it means that there's a lot of inflammation going on.
In the tubes?
In the body in general. Okay. In the body. Don't forget that the inflammation is not going on just in the heart, it's going on in the whole vascular system, including the brain and all of the organs of the body. And so by looking at the CRP once a year, we can see whether or not there is advanced inflammatory process going on in the body. Secondly, we need to look at the hemoglobin A1C. As we talked about yesterday, hemoglobin attaches to oxygen naturally in the lungs and delivers it to the cells. But when sugar gets attached to our hemoglobin, it never lets go, and the red blood cell has to die 90 to 120 days later in order for us to get rid of that, what we call glycated hemoglobin, glycated meaning sugar, attached to my hemoglobin in the red blood cell, right? So that binding of sugar with the red blood cell, with our hemoglobin in the red blood cell, is a danger to the vascular system, to the circulatory system. So that's a number that we need to pay attention to. If that number is 6 or higher, for instance, we are pre-diabetic. And that means that there is inflammation going on. And as we said yesterday, the number one killer of diabetics is a heart attack, because that glycated hemoglobin, sugar attached to my red blood cell, is a free radical, and it does accelerated damage to the vascular system, not just the heart, but all over the body. And so we need to pay attention to that number. 7 or higher means we're diabetic, but that high blood sugar is really puts us at a risk for a heart attack. So that's something that we need to pay attention. And of course, your blood pressure is important. We mentioned that nitric oxide is the natural substance that the body uses to dilate arteries and open them up. And high blood pressure is a risk factor for a heart attack. So, and we talked about how physical activity increases your nitric oxide and your ability to dilate your arteries. and open them up. And when we sit in a chair all day long watching television or whatever we're doing in a chair, that's not a good thing for your heart. That's a risk factor. That's why yesterday we jumped up and did a few exercises.
Yeah. So being sedentary is a risk.
Yes.
Having a high-fat diet is a risk. Having too much sugar is a risk.
In fact, there's a saying out there right now that sitting is the new smoking. And so sitting in a chair for more than an hour, things start to happen. Blood flow slows down, you know, the triglycerides start to get more active and begin to do negative things to the vascular system, let's put it that way. So after sitting for an hour, it's just a good idea to just get up out of the chair for 30 seconds, walk around the room, maybe do a couple of 2-3 deep knee bends and, you know, arms over your head, exercises kind of thing. And just get that blood flowing again, because the sitting really puts it, long hours of sitting put us at risk for heart disease.
Okay.
That's an important thing to realize.
So keep moving, cut the fat.
Yes.
Avoid the sugar. Diabetes raises the risk for heart disease. Not moving around raises the risk to heart disease.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a whole host of other factors. And I guess what we're focusing here on in this program is, and this whole series is getting back to simplicity, right? Back to the diet that God gave us in the Garden of Eden.
The Eden diet.
Which has, which doesn't have the saturated fats, the processed fats.
And no cholesterol.
And
there is
got
no
more
cholesterol
fiber,
in the Eden diet.
The cholesterol, and drink more water, keep going, keep moving, and
Simple
all these things affect the tubes that the blood flows through to go to the heart, which is the organ that, you know, pumps blood to the whole body, and that's what keeps us alive. And if we have a meltdown there, we're at risk of having the first symptom, like you mentioned, which is sudden death.
Yes, and that's a very unpleasant symptom. Now, one other risk factor that I need to mention, and that is abdominal fat. The fat that concentrates around the abdomen. When we are on the SAD diet, the standard American diet, right? We very often will accumulate fat in the area of the abdomen, what they call visceral fat, which actually accumulates on the inside of the abdominal cavity around the organs. It turns out that that fat is not like the fat on your arms or on your legs. This kind of fat, visceral fat, produces inflammatory cytokines. And these inflammatory cytokines are what do the damage to the arteries that create the blocking of the arteries over time. And if it's, as I said, if it's soft plaque, then of course it can rupture and produce a blood clot. So it is very important to make sure that your waist girth, that's one of the risk factors, your waist girth is in the right range, not more than 40 for men and 35 for women. So the waist girth is important because it's the source of the inflammatory cytokines that do the damage, one of the sources that does damage to the arteries. So you need to pay attention. And so how do you reduce your waist girth, your visceral fat? What do you do?
Your belly fat, right?
Belly fat, exactly. What do you do? The answer is, you walk.
You eat less and you walk more.
Well, not even eat less. I would say that you eat the Eden diet, the plant-based diet. You can eat as much as you want of that diet because that diet is not going to have the harmful cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol that will damage the artery. And if you are walking and using the Eden diet, remember the Eden diet has lots of fiber. Yesterday we talked about a minimum of 25 grams of fiber. Well, if you're eating that diet, you don't even have to worry about counting how many grams of fiber you're getting. You're getting more than many.
So what's the quickest way again to bring the belly down?
Yes, so you need that source, the high fiber source of calories to bring down the belly fat, and you also need the physical activity. The combination is very powerful.
Okay, so natural diet and moving.
The combination, one thing, again, we would like to say one thing potentiates the other, makes the other more powerful. There's a synergy that's going on there, so that, you know, it's not just 1 + 1 is 2, it's 1 + 1 is 4, because it's so powerful used together. And that's the point. So we need to pay attention to that.
I mean, on a real practical level, as you mentioned, you know, heart disease develops gradually.
Sure.
It develops bite by bite, chair by chair. You know, the longer
Indeed.
we're just not moving around, and the more food that we eat that is not that is not healthy for us, little by little by little, those tubes slowly get affected. The blood thickens, the walls become damaged, and we increase our risk. And so, really, on a practical day-to-day, you know, it's just really, it's those little decisions one by one. And we're all being bombarded with all these advertisements for food that's not good for us. We've got all the, you know, fast food restaurants all over the place, and it's so easy just to compromise and go along with what our taste buds want, and what's easier just sitting around. But slowly but surely, we're raising our risk level.
Insulting the heart.
Yeah, and so to lower the risk, we need to just get into a habit of moving more and eating more natural foods, more of the food that's grown, the plant-based foods.
And drinking that
and
pure
drinking that water, and just step by step, we are lowering our risk, right, of that heart attack, which is killing so many people.
So, in the few remaining minutes that we have left, I want to talk a little bit about this strategy that you just mentioned. What are the practicalities of putting that in place? Okay. So many people make a New Year's resolution, you know, I'm going to be more physically active, and it lasts for a week, 10 days, or, you know, a relatively short period of time. How can you make this a habit so that it becomes a permanent part of your lifestyle? And one of the things that I do as a lifestyle interventionist is I facilitate the interventions that people are going to put in place. So for instance, I say to them, look, if you're going to be more physically active, you have to set a time. You can't say, I'm going to be walking today at noon and then the next day at 7 o'clock in the evening and all over the map. There needs to be a time. The brain likes regularity. And so when you get up in the morning, think about the day. When is the best time for me to set a time? Put a stake in the sand. And one of the facilitators of that stake in the sand is your cell phone. Your cell phone has an alarm. Set an alarm. If it's 11 o'clock, that cell phone goes off at 11. And you know it's time to push back from the desk, whatever, get up. Maybe in the morning when you got up, you prepared yourself by putting on your walking shoes. The brain takes note of that. I'm going to walk. You see, all these little things that we do the night before, you lay out your walking clothes or jogging, whatever you're going to, you know, all those little things that you do to prepare, it tells the brain something's going to happen, and it prepares you to get active. All these little things make a difference. Shopping, you know, making sure that you bring the right foods home, that you're not putting that sweet drink in the refrigerator, that high fructose corn syrup drink that's going to trash your arteries, you know, and create trouble for you long term. So all these things make a difference, and we have to recognize that little things can really, you know, little foxes spoil the vine. That's what the Bible says.
A little leaven leavens the whole lump.
So prepare the evening before and dress for the weather. There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. Put on a hat so that you don't lose heat through your head. You lose, a lot of your heat that you lose when you're out there is from the top of your head. Put on a hat. I wear some gloves. I dress warmly. I have a couple of 2-3 layers. And my wife and I go out and take that brisk walk. We do it at a certain time every day, after breakfast, basically. And so all those things, take a friend. In my case, my friend is my wife. So that's a good thing, right? A friend will hold you accountable. So all of those things make a difference.
Practical steps. Yeah, I like to walk after I eat.
Yes.
As much as I can, not always, but after breakfast this morning, I took a walk. After lunch today, I'm going to take a little time and walk, and I do this often in the evenings too, after I have a supper. And it's just those daily choices, step by step, that helps us to win the battle of the body.
There's a saying in Spanish, poco a poco se va lejos. Little by little, you go far.
Yeah, that's right, little by little. Well, we've come far to the end of our program. So, Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, the Bible says, keep your heart with all diligence. In other words, make those diligent efforts to keep your heart and to have a healthy heart, not only spiritually, but physically, for out of it are the issues of life. Heart disease is a terrible thing, and if a loved one, someone that you know, or you, have a heart attack, if you die early, this is a tragedy, and God wants us to live as long as possible down here, so take those practical steps, protect your heart from a heart attack, and don't you be the attacker.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Body Battles. Before you go, these health resources are available from White Horse Media. First, our book, End Times Health War, which is loaded with life-changing information about the secrets of health, plus how you can supercharge your health by adding sprouts to your diet and by drinking organic fresh juices. If you would rather read smaller books, we have the same information in these little pocketbooks: Fabulous Health Made Simple, Surviving Toxic Terrorism, Juice Your Way to Fabulous Health, and Sprout Power. You may also be interested in these other wonderful pocketbooks: Help for the Hopeless and Secrets of Inner Peace. They're all short, easy to read, and easy to share. They are all available from White Horse Media.
We hope you've been blessed by this White Horse Media production. To support White Horse Media, please call us at 1-800-78-BIBLE. That's 1-800-782-4253. You may also send your donations by mail to White Horse Media, P.O. Box 130, Priest River, Idaho 83856, or donate online at whitehorsemedia.com.
Wait, before you go, and you know what I'm going to say, if you enjoyed this message, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. To hear more messages, check out our other videos. Have a blessed day.